back to the Spicy Sports Show with Sam Cerrone on Spreaker Radio, coming to you live from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. So much to talk about this week. Again, I have a great set for you tonight. College football, huge weekend games, and looking forward to a lot more next weekend. I mean, next weekend is where it really starts to get into the grind of the college football schedule, where we really see who's real and who's not. Also, obviously, we're going to talk about Florida now that Jeff Driscoll's out for the season. What can we expect from the Florida Gators, and why I can already scratch off Notre Dame as a national championship contender. In the NFL, a lot to talk about in Week 3, huge Week 3, and why a couple teams that were perennial favorites that seem to be a lock into the playoffs are struggling right now, 1-2. And my thoughts on that. In Major League Baseball, the ceremony of Mariano Rivera, arguably the greatest closer in the history of baseball. There's actually really no question. And obviously some MLB action. There's still some wild cards left to be decided. And finally, we'll recap with the Manchester Derby between Manchester United and Manchester City, two of the greatest clubs in England, and how that turned out this morning. And in my final thought, I'll talk about why there's only one true role model in history of sports. I'm not really a big role model guy with sports, with athletes, just because they're not really supposed to be role models, in my opinion. But there's only one. And I'll tell you who that is at the end of my show. But there's so much to talk about in the world of sports. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Spicy Sports Show with Sam Cerrone on Spreaker Radio, coming to you live from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. If you want to tweet at me at scerrone00, SCERON00. And like I said, before I get started, this is my last show for a little while. I do have some other things I do want to work on, some other personal projects. So I'm going to put this on hiatus for a while. Again, it's been really fun, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. Again, I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of feedback. And it's been absolutely phenomenal. And thank you all for those who have listened, just because it's allowed me to really hone this craft in broadcasting and learning to perfect it week in and week out. And that's usually the goal. So that, yeah, like I said, it'll be I don't know when the next time I'll put up another podcast or another show, really. But yeah, this will be my last one for a while. But like I said, I'm still really excited for what we have on to talk about tonight. So, without further ado, let's talk about some NFL. All right, talking about some NFL, obviously, and before I get under the way, I'm a little under the weather today, if you can tell. I'm a little bit stuffy, but let's keep going. All right, starting with the early games, the Cincinnati Bengals 34-30 win over the Green Bay Packers. Both teams turned it over 4 times in the game, but it was the last turnover late by the Green Bay Packers and the 58-yard fumble that recovered by Cincinnati and took it all the way, taking it back to the house. Bengals now 2-1 on the season, and the Packers 1-2. In Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys now 2-0 at home and 2-1 on the season after a 31-7 romp over the St. Louis Rams. Tony Romo 17-24, 210 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Great performance. And DeMarco Murray, boy does he love playing against the Rams. 26 carries, 175 yards and a touchdown on the day. Moving down to Tennessee, the Titans 2-1 on the year. Titans getting by the Chargers 20-17. Jake Locker looking pretty good, 23 of 37 for 299 yards and a score. 2 turnovers on the day for the Titans, but they get by Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers by a final score of 20-17. In Cleveland, the Browns. Browns? Yes, the Browns get their first win of the year behind third-string quarterback Brian Hoyer. Yes, Brian Hoyer, 30 of 54, 321 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the day. It's absolutely been phenomenal. And it's, again, to think that the Browns are 1-2 after they traded away their third overall pick last year in Trent Richardson, and to put in a third-string quarterback, no name at running back. And it was an amazing game. The Vikings, so many questions at 0-3. It's just not looking good for them as they move forward. And again, with the Vikings, they were supposed to be a team that could potentially contend in the NFC North, and really with an 0-3 start, it's really hard, especially with Chicago looking good right now tonight. as well as, again, you still have Green Bay, even though they're 1-2, and Detroit, they're looking pretty good as well. All right, moving on. In New England, the Patriots now 2-0 at home and 3-0 on the season after they get a win over the Buccaneers 23-3. Tom Brady, 25 of 36, 225 and 2 touchdowns. He's looking pretty good with his receivers now. They're starting to click a little bit more, but the Buccaneers 0-3. So many questions. They lose the first 2 games. They lost by 3 points. This game they lost by 20. Josh Freeman didn't look good in the game. 19 for 41, 236 yards on the day. In New Orleans, 31-7 final. That score seems to be very common. 31 points. 31-7. The Saints just run all over the Arizona Cardinals. Drew Brees, 29 of 46, 342 yards, 3 TDs, 2 of them to the best tight end in the game, in my opinion, Jimmy Graham. On the flip side, for Carson Palmer, they were a team that could contend, but it was a tough day for Carson Palmer as he was 18 of 35 for 187 yards in the day. In Washington, the Redskins, 0-3 to start the season after a lot of expectations and potential quote-unquote Super Bowl expectations. Really not looking good if you're a Redskin fan. They lose 27-20 to the Detroit Lions. Matthew Stafford, 25 of 42, 385 yards and 2 scores on the day. Redskins keep turning over the ball. 4 turnovers on the day. Robert Griffin, 32 of 50, 326 yards. But the thing is, he cannot run anymore. Again, coming off that knee injury, it's been a big problem for the Redskins in that offense that they really, really want to run. Moving on to another NFC East team, the Giants get blanked by the Panthers. Yeah, 38-0 final. Manning gets sacked 7 times. Eli Manning gets sacked 7 times, 6 in the first half, 3 turnovers on the day. Worst loss in the Tom Coughlin era. So many questions in New York. We'll talk about who the best team is in New York for now. But 0-3, unbelievable. Cam Newton didn't look too bad. 15 of 27, 223 yards throwing, and 3 touchdowns on the day. And D'Angelo Williams finally runs over 400 yards. It's barely been a while since they have had a good runner other than Cam Newton on that team in a while. In Baltimore, 30-9 the final. What a game it was between those two teams. Again, Houston with Ed Reed coming back to Baltimore after leaving the Baltimore Ravens, now going to Houston on a different contract. I think it was a 2-year contract. Wow, the Ravens, absolutely unbelievable at home. 30-9 win. Joe Flacco, again, not efficient. Both quarterbacks really weren't efficient offensively. This was mostly a defensive battle. Time possession about the same. Total yardage offensively about the same. But it was the defensive touchdowns and the special teams touchdowns by the Ravens that put them over the top. Again, huge win for the Ravens, even though they were without Ray Rice and a lot of offensive weapons already out for the year. This Ravens team doesn't look too bad after that loss to the Broncos early in the season. Moving on some of the late games, the Miami Dolphins are 3-0 on the season after they defeat the Atlanta Falcons. What a game that was, 27-23. The Falcons were up huge at one point, but the Dolphins run back. Huge game from Ryan Tannehill, 24 of 35, 236 yards and 2 touchdowns in the day. On the flip side, Matt Ryan, 23 of 38 for 231 yards and 2 touchdowns. Really a lot of questions with Atlanta's defense that they revamped in the offseason. They cut a lot of players, assuming that this defense could potentially get better. So that's that's definitely a big shocker for a team that was about a couple plays away from the Super Bowl last season. In San Francisco, the Indianapolis Colts, who were a huge underdog to the San Francisco 49ers. Again, 49ers lost huge on Sunday Night Football to the Seattle Seahawks, which really, the Seahawks were really good. But the 49ers are just right below them. But it really didn't look that way as Andrew Luck just carved them up, not really offensively, but just efficiently. 18 of 27, 164 yards in the day, and a couple of rushing touchdowns from Bradshaw and Luck. What an unbelievable performance by these Colts, honestly. 2-1 to start the season. The Niners 1-2 to start their season. A lot of questions for them. All right, moving on, the Seattle Seahawks playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were a 20-point underdog, the Jaguars, and yeah, they lived up to their expectations. 49ers put up 45 points on the day. Russell Wilson throws 4 touchdowns, going 14 of 21 and 202 yards passing. Yeah, not really much to say there. Seahawks get it done big. And finally, in Buffalo, actually in New York, at MetLife Stadium, the New York Jets are the best team in New York right now, with a huge win over the Buffalo Bills in the divisional match, 27-20. The Jets overcome a huge amount of penalties. I believe it was 20 on the day, which is a team record, and a lot of them on the defensive end that allowed E.J. Manuel and the Bills to stay in this game. But the Jets scored a touchdown late on the fourth quarter to get by the Buffalo Bills, 27-20. Geno Smith, 16 of 29 for 331 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. What a great start for Geno Smith and the Jets, with a lot of questions, obviously, in that defense. But they look pretty good. They put a lot of pressure on E.J. Manuel overall, 8 sacks on the day. The last game, going back to Thursday's game, the Chiefs and the Eagles. These two teams, again, not a lot of history until now, with Andy Reid coming back to Philadelphia on Thursday night. What a game that was. But the Chiefs come out on top due to 5 turnovers by the Eagles. Yeah, that's right, 5. Michael Vick threw a couple of interceptions, a lot of fumbles, and the Chiefs are now 3-0 to start the season, when a lot of people thought that really they wouldn't be a good team. And again, for the Eagles, after that huge start on Monday Night Football in Washington, everyone was like, oh, Chip Kelly this, Chip Kelly that. This is going to be a great system. But really, it's a gimmick for now. Again, we'll see what happens in their next game. I mean, I believe they do play Denver next. Yeah, it's not going to look pretty, considering the Broncos are absolutely rolling right now, even without Von Miller. But yeah, overall, I would say great games. And a lot of shockers, really. I mean, if you look at the standings early in the season, everyone said, yeah, the NFC is stronger than the AFC. That the NFC is the conference. Obviously, a lot more depth. But if you look at it, look at the standings right now. Dallas is their only winner in their division right now. They're 2-1. Washington's 0-3. The Giants are 0-3. Minnesota's 0-3. Tampa Bay's 0-3. San Francisco's 1-2. Atlanta's 1-2. Green Bay's 1-2. There's a lot of teams that we thought that would be contending early, but clearly they have a lot of issues defensively, and particularly with turning over the ball late in games when they're not supposed to, especially in critical situations of the game. Now, again, I said at the top of my show that there were a couple teams, again, Green Bay, Atlanta, and San Francisco 1-2 to start the season. And really, I'm almost glad. It's not a hate thing, believe me. This is coming from a Bills fan who hasn't seen the Bills in the playoffs since 1999. I was 8. All right, it's been a while. But everybody thought that at the beginning of the season, again, not much change happened in the offseason. I mean, San Francisco got more depth, supposedly. Green Bay got better. And Atlanta got some better pieces in the secondary. So they thought, oh yeah, these teams are going to be contending for a spot in the NFC Championship game and potentially the Super Bowl. But really, it doesn't work that way. Again, any team can beat any other team on any given day. Clearly. I mean, you had an Indianapolis Colts team that has a horrible offensive line. The only reason they're remotely good is because of Andrew Luck. And he's been able to get rid of the ball to Reggie Wayne and Colby Fleener. And now they have Trent Richardson who can run the ball and actually really run the ball. They look like a pretty good team. With Green Bay, again, their defense is atrocious, really. I mean, the only reason they're in games really is because the bad man himself, Aaron Rodgers, is chucking the ball everywhere to all his receivers. But when the offensive line can't protect him, that's a huge